You always find that when you have a problem, usually what's standing in your way is yourself. The biggest problem with finding someone to do that for you is you having to say, I'll relinquish control of this aspect and I'll place my faith in somebody else. And that's the biggest thing you have to overcome.
Hey, law firm owners, welcome to the Your Practice Mastered podcast. We're your hosts. I'm MPS.
And I'm Richard James. And hey, Michael, today we're going to have a great conversation with two people I actually consider friends. We met in the bankruptcy world, and they come from the bankruptcy world as owning a bankruptcy law firm, but then they transitioned over into a different brick and mortar kind of, but not brick and mortar. I don't know, let them explain it to you. But what you need to know about the way we're going to describe their business is just awesomeness. It was fun. It's been fun to watch them grow their business and how they put systems in their business to grow it. And then it's been even more exciting for us to watch them go through this little downturn in the niche that they were in and still fight their way through it and come out the other side stronger. I think that's the big lesson today, Michael. So I wanted to say welcome to Jay and Kathryn Jump. Welcome to the call today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Richard. I really appreciate it. Michael, good to see you again.
Yes, absolutely. Good to see you both, and really appreciate you guys spending some time with us on here. One of the things we like to do just to kick things off is break the ice. So you guys can either do this individually or together, but what's one thing that maybe not everybody knows about you?
Our lives are an open book for our clients. You go ahead, Kathryn.
I used to collect die-cast circus cars. I found them to be just so fascinating because they're perfectly tiny, miniature, perfect to scale. And what is business always about? Scale. So that was my, that was one thing I could share with you. That was my geeky.
I would not have guessed die-cast circus cars. There's lots of things I might have guessed. Die-cast circus cars were not one of. Well, I remember when I saw you a couple times through the years. Your Frenchie was in the background. I think unfortunately they passed away on you. Did you get another puppy or no?
We're hanging on, but I think we're living through the pictures of Michael's.
Oh, got it. Yeah, living vicariously through Michael here. Yeah. How about you, Jay? Anything you want to reveal about yourself, or does the die-cast circus cars cover it?
I think that tops mine, but I don't know if our clients and staff know this, but I am an avid skier. I've always been an avid skier, and my goal in life is to ski 100 days a year. I have yet to get there, but I aspire.
Well, my goal is to play 100 rounds of golf a year, and I haven't gotten there yet either, Jay. So we both have something to work on. So yeah, good. I love it. By the way, we were members. Matter of fact, they were a past guest on the show, Mike and Elise Chastain, and they actually met on the ski slopes. I think he was a ski instructor and she fell or something, and then she became a ski instructor as well. And so they sold their practice and they're retired and they ski a lot. So they might get to that 100 days a year. Yeah.
Yes. Well, those are both very interesting facts. I appreciate that. I'll tell you, Jay, my goal would be to avoid the ski slopes because I feel like every time I end up on the ski slopes, I end up injured. So I'm going to fall into the golf bracket on this one. But for those of them listening right now that maybe don't know much about your journey, why don't you share your journey in the legal space, both from, the law firm perspective and then kind of how you guys ended up to where you are now?
So I started practicing in 1998. I became a bankruptcy attorney in Spokane, Washington, where I went to law school at Gonzaga School of Law. Eventually, I moved to Seattle and partnered up with a friend of mine. And our goal was to become the biggest bankruptcy law firm in the state of Washington. And we actually did accomplish that goal. And then we hit a rough patch, and he decided that he wanted to go in other directions. So I kept on practicing bankruptcy. At that point, I begged Kathryn to come work for me because I saw what she was doing for her boss and making his business run. And of course, she was helping me out on the weekends and stuff with processing cases. So she agreed, reorganized my operation, took control of it, let me be an attorney, and she ran the office. And we built a lovely boutique Chapter 13 practice in Seattle that was just phenomenal. But one of the pinch points in our practice was every day we would have to stop and stuff envelopes to notify all the creditors in our various Chapter 13 cases. And the judges in Seattle weren't about to pay me my hourly rate to stuff envelopes, nor would they let me charge my paralegals time to stuff envelopes. So we were eating that cost, and it was just detrimental. Not so much the cost that we were eating, but the fact that we couldn't generate that revenue. So we looked around for a solution, couldn't find it, and we said, hey, if we have this problem, everybody else does too. And that's how we built our mailing company, certificateservice.com. And we tried to do both for a while, but then COS just grew and grew and grew. Kathryn came to me at one point and said, you've got to make a choice, practice law or do COS. And it wasn't a difficult choice to make. So I closed the law firm in 2010, and we've been mailing documents for law firms ever since. And today we have over 5,000 clients. It's just been a scalable business that's been amazing, a blast to operate and run.
Congratulations on that success. I love how you passed the ball over. I don't know if she caught it, but Kathryn, I mean, he really gave you a lot of credit for allowing for this to happen, not suggesting in any way that the business wasn't working well without you. But it sounds like, you came in and streamlined operations and understood systems and building processes. And you didn't have to be a lawyer at all, right?
No.
You could just focus on fixing the
Mhm.
business. Do you think that helped you be able to do that? Obviously, you had some experience with it, but do you think the fact that you just were able to focus on the business itself and not the law of the business, that it allowed you to help you do
I
that?
think that's exactly what it was. Jay was trying to do both, and we all know multitasking, you're not great at either one. So I said, you practice law. I need you to be the brain, and I'll take care of everything else. So we changed up the flow of the office, changed up who did what. I was still able to bill some paralegal time during the day as well, but by shifting some of the tasks he was doing that he was just used to doing from being a solo practitioner. So it was just what he always did. He couldn't imagine not doing those things.
Right.
Once we switched that around and he saw that he had room to practice, he was able to completely up the revenue on his own just by applying more to the cases. And so, yeah, he was pretty wowed when he saw the bank balance.
I bet he was.
It
Yeah.
made me a better attorney as well. I mean, to be able to focus on law, it allowed us to really build our consumer oriented practice. We could take on different kinds of cases, and Kathryn allowed me to focus on that. So, yeah, without a doubt, I would not be here today without Kathryn's influence and organizational skill, or critical.
Michael, do you hear I hear a secondary follow-up question in here that I think could be beneficial to everybody. Are you okay if I ask it?
Please.
Okay, so here's the question. We know who the avatar of the listener is. Typically, they're a law firm owner, and maybe everything's going fine. They're just learning how to get a little tidbit, how to get better. But oftentimes, they're struggling with something, right? They're in chaos somewhere in their practice. Maybe they're listening to this at 2:00 in the morning, after wondering how they were going to make payroll tomorrow. And so now let's say they don't have Kathryn and they're not married to Kathryn and they're not going to get to be married to your Kathryn. Right? So that those options are off the table. Like, what do you tell them? They're so busy trying to be a lawyer and run the business. Like, what advice do you give them from your experience when they're faced with that challenge?
Go find a Kathryn, a different Kathryn than mine. But
Okay.
you need to find someone who will organize you. The truth of the matter is this: I'm a great lawyer, not the greatest business person. I'm not the most organized person. So what I needed was someone to basically point me in the direction I needed to go and say, go that way. And the hardest thing about that, you always find that when you have a problem, usually what's standing in your way is yourself. The biggest problem with finding someone to do that for you is you having to say, I'll relinquish control of this aspect and I'll place my faith in somebody else. And that's the biggest thing you have to overcome.
Yeah. And when you relinquish that control to your spouse, like I tell people who are married and work together, my wife and I, we've been married for 29 years, together 36-ish, and we've been working together forever. And so when I hear that from other people, I say, congratulations, you're working together, and my condolences, right? Because it cuts both directions, right? And so, yeah, that's a great lesson. Thank you for sharing that. Kathryn, did you want to add to that, or can I pass it back to Michael?
Go ahead and pass it back to Michael. I think Jay did a great job there.
Okay, good.
Yeah, no, and Rich, I mean, I think we've seen this a lot through our time of working with different law firms, that this combo of attorney and non-attorney, whether it be a spouse as a non-attorney or just even a business manager as a non-attorney, it's a really powerful combo, because the business manager is able to focus on the business growth and the attorney is able to focus on maximizing the law side of the practice. And it's been a really explosive combo for a lot of firms.
There's no wrong answer to this, MPS. You can be an attorney who really doesn't want to practice law anymore, and what you really love is the business, and then
Right.
you can hire associates to do the law, and you could run the business and have assistants or people help you. But I would say we don't, Michael, agree or disagree with me if you want, but we don't. That's not usually what makes up most of who we run into. Most of who we run into really like being a lawyer at some level, and they want to still be a lawyer at some level.
Right.
And so what we find is they need Jay's advice, right? And Kathryn's advice. Go find yourself a Kathryn who can run the business. And that's where we see them start to flourish.
Yes.
I mean, they could literally stop listening and just go do that. Like, that's a huge takeaway. But I don't want to stop listening here. Michael, keep going.
No, I know there's going to be tons of action items and takeaway from this podcast. Jay and Kathryn, I'm curious. Obviously, life's not all sunshine and rainbows all the time. So was there ever a low point or a down point in this journey? And what's something you took from that?
I think that we have experienced so many ups and downs. I mean, there have been days where we land a bunch of new clients, or we get mentioned at a CLE, and all of a sudden the registration inbox is full. And then there's days where everything crashes and falls to the ground. All the plates that we've been trying to keep in the air and spinning just come down, and it's a cascade of errors. I think the biggest thing that I have found over the years is that when we are at our lowest, that is where we find where our strength is at. There's just been so many times where I've looked at Kathryn and she's looked at me, and we've just said, yeah, this is awful, this is terrible, but the only way is through. And so let's go grind and push through it. And that has been, truly, that's a life lesson that doesn't apply just to law, but to everything. To be able to have someone that you can push through all the worst problems with, and they're standing beside you. Yeah, it's priceless.
The only way is to push through. I love it. Kathryn, how about you?
Well, we have a story about getting the boat out of the water in the middle of the night on Lake Roosevelt. Large boat, just the two of us, midnight, crazy. Everything was going wrong. Everything. Tie straps broke. The boat wouldn't get on the trailer right. He'd start to pull out. We'd think it was going to come off. We were exhausted by the time Jay said, okay, one more try. If we don't get it, we'll just leave it. And I said, okay, I'm in for one more try. And I don't know if it was something from above or inner strength in us, but lo and behold, I put the truck back into first and started pulling up the ramp, waiting to hear the snap or the crack or the stop. And I kept rolling and rolling, and nothing was happening. And I was thinking, oh my gosh. And then Jay ran up and he says, okay, move over, let me drive. But it worked. We got the boat out of the water. And to this day, one of the two things we say to each other in those times is, we got to pull the boat out of the water. We also have always said the only way out is through. If you stop, you're still in it. So you got to keep moving. You got to go through.
Very well said.
I love it. Yeah. I mean, there are so many people. Just think about all the bankruptcy attorneys. And sadly, I know the market's up, but there are some bankruptcy attorneys who lost a lot of market share to those bankruptcy attorneys who didn't turn marketing off. And now that the market's up, they're not really experiencing the same up that the other guys or gals are experiencing. I'm hearing that out there. So there's still a lot of BK attorneys that are still struggling, even though the market's coming back a little bit. But that time through COVID was really dark, especially for the Chapter 13, 7 and 13s, like 6 to 9 months later when this check started falling off. Like they didn't realize it the first 3 or 4 or 5 months because the checks kept coming in. But all of a sudden the checks stopped showing up and they were like, oh my gosh, now what am I going to do? And that was a tough time. And they need the ones who persevered, the ones who said, the only way out of this is through it. The only way out of this is to, double down and let's figure out a better way to do it. Those are the ones that really are thriving right now. That doesn't mean that it's over for the ones who didn't. That's okay. We can learn the lesson. Now the lesson learned is the lesson you just gave them. If you feel like you're in a tough time, whether you're a bankruptcy attorney or a family law attorney or criminal attorney or any type of business owner that happens to be listening to this, you just gotta realize that sometimes you just got to look one another in the eye, or look yourself in the eye if you don't have another. If you don't have a Kathryn or a Jay, and just say, okay, the only way out of this is through it. Michael, how about you? Have you had, I don't know if have you had that? I wonder. I guess when you took your one business and you tried to grow it into building websites, I suppose you had that moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I had lots along that time. When you deal with contractors and then you bring a bunch of employees on and the contractor drops the ball, and now you're getting refund requests because contractor dropped the ball, and now you've got payroll due in 2 days and you're scrambling to try to figure out how to make it work. It's stressful, but I can also agree with Kathryn and Jay. By just choosing to stop and do nothing about it, you don't get through it. You just stay in it. In fact, it would only continue to get worse. So you've just got to keep going. And so I think that's a very valuable lesson. And Kathryn, one of the things you had also mentioned pre-show was during that COVID era, and I thought this was something that's just very valuable to hear in general, is you had mentioned the importance of, while the market was down, that meant all the more reason you guys had to dig in deeper and market more. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, from great people before me, that when things are down, that is when you market the most. And it didn't make sense to me back when I was younger and heard that. But as I grew our company, I really understood it, because being top of mind, being out there, being helpful, being aware, still trying to connect with people and let them know there's solutions. Maybe they're not the best solution today, but they're going to be there and they're going to be worthwhile. That was a lesson well learned. And when I used that very same idea, it worked. It worked marvelously. I didn't see it right at the moment, because how could I? But now our pipeline is so full from that digging deeper, little more grit, little tougher, working it out, going through it. And I got the luxury of doing it when things were slower. So I actually had a little more time to invest in it at that time. And it is paying off in spades. I can tell you that rule of business is 100% accurate.
Hey, Jay, talk a little bit. I heard Kathryn's upside, but I'm curious. I don't know which one of you pay attention to the numbers more. I'm not suggesting that I'm just going to ask you on your opinion on this. Was there fear around investing more resources and time and money into growing your influence whilst less money was coming in theoretically? How did you and if there was, how did you overcome that fear?
I don't think there was ever a fear of leaning into the problem. I think at some point, both of us sat down and said, well, because literally we watched revenue drop off the cliff in the space of 2 weeks. We went from our best year ever to a terrible slash in business, to the point where we're like, I don't know that we're going to be able to pay the bills next month. But there was never a time when we sat there and said, okay, well, we're just going to stop and close it all up and retreat. We said, we've got to lean into it. And so it became a two-pronged approach. We looked at what we could do to lean into it, and we looked at how we could do it cheaply so we wouldn't spend too much money and exhaust our resources. But at the same time, we must have had meetings at least every 3 or 4 weeks where we would sit down and say, okay, let's take a hard look at our revenue numbers. And we had a plan in place where we could collapse the business down from its present size to a smaller size. And then we had plan B to collapse it down to a smaller size yet. And then a plan C to collapse it down again. And we never had to get to plan B or plan C, but taking a two-tiered approach to say, how can we expand while being prepared to lessen our, I don't know how to say it, because we didn't ever want to shut down, but we said, okay, here are the places we can slash and cut if we have to and still keep the doors open. So it was a two-pronged approach.
Mike McCallis uses this analogy the best. He gives the analogy like when you have a full tube of toothpaste, you'll put toothpaste on the toothbrush, you'll put it under the water will throw the toothpaste off the toothbrush, you'll just push it down the drain. When you've got down to the very, very, very bottom part of the toothpaste, you'll put it on there, and if that would throw off the toothbrush onto the sink because the water hit it too hard, you'd literally go down there and scoop it off the bottom of the bowl to use it to brush your teeth, right? I mean, so that's where you were, all of us were, or many of us were during that time. And so that's a great analogy. You just figured out how to do more with less or the same, right? And so I love it. That's the grit that's talked about as entrepreneurship, but just figuring out how to go about doing that. So congratulations for digging your way out of that storm. MPS, where do you want to go from here?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've just got two very impressive business owners in front of us. I'd love to know, what are some of the success habits that you guys have on a daily basis? You guys can go individually. Kathryn, how about you? What are some of the things you guys or you do personally to continue the sustained success?
At this point, I can say, every day I'm looking at the money, I'm looking at the income, I'm looking at the outgoing. I'm looking to see what the return on investment is for various projects that we do, as well as marketing, everything that we've invested in, our people, our inventory, our equipment. I look at it daily. I stay a step ahead on, hey, is something going to change in price? Do we need a second supplier, a second vendor? We have really just managed to, within the first, let's say 20 minutes of the day, run through all those things and see where we're at and then plan on where we want to be.
Is it safe to say it didn't always take you 20 minutes a day?
No, some days it takes me 20 minutes because I'm looking at it smiling, just smiling.
Right. What I mean by that is we make it sound like 20 minutes a day, and I know that it is, and I know that it is for me too. But when you first get started into building these habits, it takes a while to build your framework of how you're going to look at things and how you're going to move through things. And it takes a little longer in the beginning, but over time, it's fair to say that you really can get a 30,000-foot view on these things within 15, 20 minutes a day, and you've got your finger on that pulse every single day, correct?
Yes. And that is the old adage of, you need the right tools to do the job. And I have the right tools. I'm very lucky that way.
That's terrific. I think that's a valuable habit and just another demonstration of the importance of knowing your numbers, right? Yeah. And the power that brings. Jay, what about you? What are some of the daily success habits that you have that lead to the continued success?
Well, I think Kathryn just called me a tool, and I'm kind of insulted.
You're a good tool.
The two things that I've learned are that, one, I have to be optimistic and I have to be grateful, because over the years, I've gone from being a lawyer to being a CEO of this large company. And those require two different mindsets. I've really learned the difference between thinking like a lawyer and thinking like a business owner. But COVID taught me to be grateful for what I have. And that makes me optimistic, because every day you get up and I look at all these problems that I have to confront, because that's what we do as business owners. We solve problems. We search for inefficiencies and correct them. And if ever we sit there and think that, well, I've done it all, I'm successful, there's another inefficiency lurking just around the corner. But every day I get up and I think about today's problems that I have to get through, and it seems like the mountain in front of me is very large. But then I realize that I need to look behind me and see where I've come. And, I've gone from graduating law school to practicing a successful law career to creating a side hustle that became this monster business. And I'm grateful for having been able to do all that. I think about how far I have come, and then you turn around, look at the hill in front of you, and you say, yeah, it's not that big a hill anymore, and I can be optimistic. But the two biggest things I've learned to keep me going uphill is to be grateful for what I've accomplished and to be optimistic about what I can accomplish. There are more problems to solve, and I will get to them.
Well, I got to tell you, optimism isn't my issue. I wake up every morning and the first thing that I do is I check to make sure the hairdryer is working. That's how optimistic I am. I mean, so no, just joking. But gratitude, both of those things are obviously really important. But gratitude, I will tell you, the more I study successful, content, or happy individuals,
Mhm.
they're the ones who practice gratitude, right? The being grateful for what they try their best to avoid the grass is greener on the other side. If you spend any time at all, if you've trained your Instagram or TikTok or YouTube shorts or whatever to give you business improvement stuff at all, or Tony Robbins like stuff, you'll be inundated with people that make you feel, or can, if you let them, make you feel very small about what you've accomplished because of the overwhelming bragging that they're doing about what they've accomplished, whether it be true or not true. And so it's very easy to get dragged into, oh my gosh, look at what they're doing as compared to what I'm doing. The grass is greener. But that centering of having gratitude, Jay, that is such great advice. So, at Partners Club, and this isn't to talk about Partners Club, I'm just telling you a story of what we do. We have these little blue sticky notes and it says, I'm grateful for, and we give them to the Partners Club members. And their goal is just take a sticky note and stick it on somebody, that gave them a piece of advice or whatever, right? Because we really want to practice this art of gratitude. Because what I've learned, I don't know about you, I spent, as you guys remember, 12 years in the funeral business, and I never saw a U-Haul behind the hearse, right? So I know you can't take it with you. And so, now that I've made $1 or $2, I realize that money's great and I like it, but it's not going to bring happiness in and of itself. You got to find a way to bring inner happiness. And the only true path to that I have found is this gratitude secret. So I appreciate you saying that. We don't talk about that a lot around here. And I will tell you, I find that to be a huge needle mover for the overall inner happiness of people. So thank you for that.
You're very welcome. And to be honest, I was at one of your seminars in Phoenix a few years ago. I got that sticky note.
Oh, nice.
And you had externalized what I had always known intrinsically, but hadn't really brought it to the fore. And it is important to practice gratitude because it's self-fulfilling. When you start being grateful for others and what they have accomplished, that giving of energy comes back on you tenfold. And I think that once Kathryn and I learned that secret, and once we had believed in ourselves and certificate of service, we would take that to other businesses and say, this is how we can improve you. This is what we can do for you. We can make everything better, and you can improve. And that kind of giving, if you will, it just feeds back upon you because it creates a positive feedback loop. I don't think I've done a very good job of explaining it. It's a little more self-centered than I wanted it to be. But I do believe you have to practice gratitude immensely in everything you do.
Yeah. Michael, our time is flying quick here. I want to be respectful of their time. Where do you want to go from here?
Time flies when you're having fun. What's got both of you guys fired up today? It could be personal, it could be business. Kathryn, how about you? What's got you excited?
I think what has me excited about today is I have a couple of meetings later this morning with some really interesting and empowering people. And I look forward to their energy and feeling that energy.
Nice.
That's always a great highlight for me when we can just have a discussion and just feel that energy.
I love it. Yes.
That is the highlight of my day. That's why I like doing these interviews.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We're borrowing one another's energy right now, right? I mean, it's just I come off these podcast days. There'll be days Michael and I will do 3 or 4 or 5 episodes because we'll block them all out or whatever. Wow. And I'll be honest, sometimes they're mentally draining, right? Because you're trying to be on at every one. I'm over here taking notes. But at the same time, the energy that is passed between these humans over this virtual airway is just, I wish I could bottle it up and save it for another day, right? I'm like, why did I get it all in one day? Like, how do I put it in a bottle so I can put it on the shelf on that day that I need some more energy? I could just open it up and let it escape into the room.
Yep. No, that's very well put. Well, that's great, Kathryn. Getting on a call with energetic people is fun. right? It's just fun and it fuels you. So I think that's awesome. Jay, what about you? What's got you fired up and excited?
I'm going to tell you about a blessing and a curse. And the curse
All right.
comes first. I don't know if you can see this very well. I'm going to shift my monitor a little bit. You see an unfinished door there in the corner. That's the entrance to my office.
Uh-huh.
Well, we are in the middle of a remodel of our house. And so I'm glad it doesn't pick up on the microphones, but there's a lot of banging, a lot of machines going. It's very noisy and awful, and it's miserable. But when it's done, we're going to have new doors throughout the house, new trim, and a new fireplace. And that is going to be the blessing, because this is the culmination of what we've been trying to get to for several years now. We are redoing our house in the image that we want it to be. And when we get there, it's going to be the blessing. But for now, we must endure the curse, which also tells you that the only way is through.
Yeah.
I
We
like
have
it.
to get through this.
By the way, speaking of blessing, off camera before we got started, I think you had mentioned to me that 2023, you had gone through that hellish period through COVID, but 2023 ended up to be your best year ever. Is that right?
Yeah, we felt it in March of 2023. There just seemed to be a shift in the way business was coming in. All of a sudden, what was sporadic had become much more steady. And then in the last quarter of 2023, we just experienced a surge upward, and that has not abated. We are now in the middle of February. So for the
Fantastic.
other practitioners who are out there, and if your district is still a little bit slow, fear not. Business is coming. We watch this on a national basis, and business is going up overall across the country. So the volume for you in 2024 for all of us is going to be much bigger than we ever thought. And I will say this, I know we're all praying for a tsunami, but I have to say the way this has been ratcheting up is good, solid level growth. And it's better than a tsunami, because then we'd be quickly overwhelmed. This level of growth and uptick is going to allow us to expand and deal with it in a good way. We won't get overwhelmed. We'll be able to constructively make it work for us. So I'm very happy with where things are going overall, and I think this is a good time to be a bankruptcy lawyer.
Yeah. As a business owner, I'll take 20% year over year. Thank you very much. We don't need 100%. 20% is wonderful. Everybody can eat on 20% growth a year. It works for everybody. What a great conversation we've had today, MPS. I mean, this is
Really
the nuggets
was.
that have been flying. It's fun. It's really fun when we get to talk to business owners. We almost always get to talk to business people, but we don't always get to talk to business owners who were in law and now own a separate business. And so you see both sides of the coin.
Right.
And watching your growth over the last couple of years, guys, have been a real joy to me. So thank you very much for being on today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for
I
having
really
us.
value our friendship, guys. It's important to us.
And I know,
Absolutely.
if I didn't say this earlier, you're one of the energetic calls that I have today that I look forward to, because whenever I get off the call and I go get up out of my chair, I don't really think both feet are hitting the floor. I might be floating just a little level above that. And it's always great to feel that way.
You're good for my ego, Kathryn.
Yes, Kathryn, we appreciate that. And to the law firm owners listening, we appreciate you. If this isn't your first time listening and you got some value from today, or you just enjoyed it, we kindly ask that you make sure you hit that subscribe or follow button, depending on where you're listening or watching, and show Kathryn and Jay some love down in the comments. Let us know if you've got any questions. Hit that like button. But thank you for taking the time to tune in today and listen to the Your Practice Mastered podcast. And Kathryn and Jay, thank you both again for investing your time today as well.
Yeah, and by the way, Kathryn and Jay, real quick, if anybody wanted to learn more about Certificate of Service and they wanted to discover more about you guys, where could they do that? Where's the best place for them to go?
Just go to certificateofservice.com. That's literally certificateofservice.com. And there's a couple of great explainer videos on there that demonstrate what we do and how we do it. There's also a video that explains the business argument for why it is a better use of your time, because you should not spend your valuable time stuffing envelopes. That's just silliness.
Amen to that. Good. Well, thanks again for being on. This has been a real pleasure. Michael, I think that's the pod.
That's the pod.